paramedic. That is Jeff Royle. We will find out what a financial paramedic is. But first of all, welcome, Jeff.
Thank you very much, John. Good to be here.
Excellent. This is going live on Jeff's channels on Facebook and LinkedIn, and also my channels as well. So if you have a question for Jeff, we're going to be finding out a bit about Jeff and his story, some of his many stories, and he's got lots to tell, but we'll only have a couple of good personal ones. And then we'll kind of lead into what is iLender and how they can help you and why they are different and everywhere and growing very, very fast. But first of all, the question on everybody's lips, Jeff, what is a financial paramedic?
That's a really good question. So a financial paramedic is somebody who can take a financial situation which might sound a bit dire and turn it into something which is actually something pretty good. And it all came about 4 or 5 years ago when I'm a Coast Guard volunteer. So when I'm not sorting people out financially, I'm sorting people out on the water. And every 2 years we have to do a medical refresher. And it was one of those courses that one of the other participants said, we're doing our paramedic type stuff for Coast Guard, and you sort people out financially. So you're sort of a financial paramedic. And it was one of those light bulb moments, I guess. And it's like, I like that. So I nicked it, as you do. And then I trademarked it. So financial paramedic is a New Zealand registered trademark, so nobody else can have it. And that's what it means. We take people who may have some kind of financial need. It doesn't necessarily have to be significantly bad or significantly complex, but we turn that round and provide a solution to make sure that people can achieve what they want to do, and we send them on their merry way.
And with something like 400 plus happy customers on your Google review, I'm sure there are plenty happy customers for what you deliver. But let's go back. Only a few years for you, Jeff, I'm sure. Let's go back. Have you got any good personal stories that kind of shaped you into the man that you are today?
Goodness me. How long have we got?
20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Okay. Three very short ones. First one is I was actually born in a hayloft above a stable in the south of England. And there was no electricity, no running water. And as you can see, it scarred me for life. My wife didn't really believe that story until probably 5 years ago when we returned to the UK and we did a bit of a tiki tour, and I found the stable yard, which still exists, and I showed her where I spent the first 5 years of my life. And moving on, probably when I was about 20, for some silly reason, it seemed a good idea at the time to drive from London to, in those days, Bombay, so known as Mumbai these days. In those days, you could go through Iran and you could go into Afghanistan without being blown up. And we were the last people as free tourists, if you like, to travel through Iran and Afghanistan. And in Iran, we were there when the Ayatollah came to power, and we were told we had to leave very quickly. And they sort of expedited that by shooting at us. So as you can see, they missed. And so we skedaddled to Afghanistan, and we were there when the Russians invaded. Bit of a story here. So we had to leave there as well. And Afghanistan was a very beautiful place. Gorgeous people, amazing architecture, amazing history. And it's so sad that obviously since that time and they're still in a mess. So that sort of taught me all sorts of things around, how we look after each other, how we look after ourselves. And then in the 90s, and again, I have no idea how this happened, but I found myself in Russia in about 93. So that would be just after the wall fell down. And for 3 years, I lived and worked in Russia. What was I doing there? I was making money. and I was selling very high-end real estate to very wealthy people of that nation. And I did that for 3 years there and a couple more years in other places, ending up in a place called Mongolia. And Mongolia was just, shall we say, a little bit different. So back to UK, and then we started in the mortgage industry. So that's a bit about me.
Excellent. And, you know, how have those experiences, call them, being India and being shot at and being in Russia selling real estate, shaped you into the financial paramedic that you are today?
I think it's all about experience. So life experience, good, bad, or indifferent, teaches us things. It teaches us to maybe think out of the square, maybe think laterally, perhaps be a bit more of a solution-based person than an issue or problem-based person. I mean, everybody has an issue or a problem somewhere. I think the one thing I've learned over the years is that there is generally a solution. So let's start there and work backwards. And if we can't find a solution for somebody day one, let's at least put a plan together to say, right, in order to get where you want to be, you need to do this, this, and this. And if you do this, this, and this, we will do that. And that stood us in good stead over many years. It's the point where now I would say most of our work is referral. So obviously we're doing something right, because otherwise people wouldn't recommend what we do.
And what you do is a little bit different to other advisors. And, you know, your favorite saying is when the bank says no, right?
Correct. And we also operate as like a broker's broker. So we have a large number of mortgage advisors in New Zealand who are very comfortable if they're dealing with, you know, the mainstream banks. But when it goes outside of that, it is a different world. It's a very different mentality, and people struggle. So rather than struggle, they will call us and say, we've got this situation, can you help us out? And quite often we will then take over that customer, if you like, and keep the advisor in the loop. And at the end of the day, the desired outcome is that the customer gets what they want to do.
So take me back. You've been in the mortgage business since the early 2000s?
Mid 90s. Wow.
Mid 90s. But you're not that old. How do you? How about telling
us? I have a gold card.
Really?
I do.
Have you got it around your neck? Was that hanging there? No.
What, you mean the one that says American Express?
So what was that? What was the? Obviously, iLender was created around 2008, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so, what was the opportunity that you saw for the market back then?
I think so. I came to New Zealand in 2006. So prior to that, we ran a mortgage business not dissimilar to here in the UK. Greater breadth of lenders, a very different legal structure and stuff like that. But the principle was the same. You know, people would go to the bank or building society, very much so in those days, and for whatever reason, the answer was no, and it would be help. You know, what do I do? Very early days of the internet, so a lot of our marketing was old school faxes. Would you believe? Mail shots, literally paper mail shots with a stamp on the envelope, and we would target accountants, solicitors, other mortgage advisors, and basically saying, if you've got a situation that you can't or don't want to deal with, you know, we are here. When we came to New Zealand, New Zealand was a very different place. So this is just before the GFC, so our timing was pretty bad. So we arrived in late 2006, messed around for 6 months, getting to know the area, and I started a mortgage business in March 2007, just at the beginning of the GFC. So at that time, basically everything shut down. So lending shut down. If people think interest rates are bad now, you have no idea what it was like back then. And I remember ASB charging me 9.25% for my first mortgage. You tell a first home buyer that these days, and their eyes glaze over. They don't know what to think about that.
Sure.
So we use that period to basically do a lot of planning. So iLender was born out of a very simple idea to make things happen. So to remove the roadblocks that are more and more and more. So regulation was starting to hit at that time, nowhere near the regulation that's in place now. 2015 saw what's called the Responsible Lending Code. I'm not adverse to that, but I do think it goes a bit too far. And then last year we had what's called the Triple CFA come in, which has been a complete train wreck for most home buyers.
Have you got a new abbreviated saying for the Triple CFA? Are you allowed to say that?
In our office, we call it Crippling Consumer Confidence Finance Act. I'm sure our esteemed leaders would not be too happy about that, but it is actually true. The Triple CFA was never ever designed to clobber people buying a property, and yet that's exactly what it has done, because it was badly worded, it was badly drafted. The powers that be were warned by the banks and by Treasury not to do it, and they did.
That's a conversation for another day. If you just in a nutshell, if you were to try and describe the types of people that you help,
yeah,
five different types.
Okay, so if you like, the first type is your first home buyer. So particularly those who may have a bit of a checkered history. In New Zealand, very common for people to go flatting. Generally speaking, only one person was on the title, if you like, on the rental, or was responsible for the electricity bill or something like that. 3 or 4 years later, go to buy your first home, bank runs a credit search, and oh look, there's a $1,700 electricity bill or something like that, for which people had no idea. That's an absolute game stopper for a bank. Fortunately, there are alternatives out there, and we've done a heap of turning first home buyers who were like really excited. I mean, I remember the first time I bought my first house. I mean, I did live on baked beans and toast for a while after that. A bit different today, but we get people almost in tears. They found the dream home, the sell and purchase agreement is running, and they've just been knocked back. So turning those from no's into yeses is immensely satisfying, and we get boxes of wine. One's just arrived. We get lovely cards. We get lots of reviews. So first home buyers is great. Other types very popular at the moment are Kiwis living overseas. So if you are living in London, for example, working in London or New York or Australia or wherever it happens to be, if you try and buy a property back here, you've got two obstacles. One is the Reserve Bank and the loan to value restrictions. But the biggest one is how the banks apply their servicing calculator to your income. So the worst offender is one of the big banks. And by the time they've applied their formulas, you can actually only use 56% of your income, which means you have a servicing fail, which means you can't buy what you want to buy. Again, alternative lenders use 100% of your income when they're servicing or testing your servicing. And contrary to popular belief, non-bank lenders now are there or thereabouts in terms of interest rates, and one is actually cheaper than a bank, which is significant. Other types of people, you would see a lot of investors in New Zealand, particularly people with multiple properties. Another unintended consequence of Triple CFA and other rules and regs have meant that the banks are forcing people to take principal interest loans on their investment portfolio. That can have a massive impact on cash flow. So, you know, most landlords in New Zealand are not the corporate that I think is portrayed in some of the press. 80% of landlords in New Zealand are mum and dad investors with one or two properties. They can't really put the rent up too much because that's going to stress out or just becomes unaffordable for a tenant. So we developed with a lender a product where it's for 20 years, so it's a 20-year term mortgage and it's 20 years interest only. So that maintains the cash flow position of the landlord, which means they can afford to keep the property or purchase another property, which means they can also keep the rent at a fair level. So that would be another one.
So just going to jump in here. If you have a question for Jeff while we're on our live stream, just drop it into the comments and we will endeavour to answer that question. Obviously, it won't be a personal situation, but those are done on a case-by-case basis or by giving this good-looking man a call. So those three: the investors, first-home buyers, and what was the second one?
Well, the second one was more around the overseas Kiwi.
That's right, overseas Kiwis.
To buy home, and the last one would be people have problems. You know, people have relationship breakdowns. They might lose their job. They might lose their business, and they can get over that. But we have a very unforgiving credit referencing system, and it's not unique to New Zealand. So those people, you know, they've got over whatever happened. It hurt, dust themselves down, and come back to the housing market. And there is a huge brick wall with a bank. So again, this is where the paramedic thing comes in. You know, we sometimes act as a bit of a sticking plaster. We need to fix a problem. So it could be that somebody lost a business in 2019, so they were bankrupted. They were discharged in 2022, and they think they can then walk into a bank and get a mortgage. In the nicest possible way, good luck with that. Because that generally won't happen. But we do have lenders who understand that. So yes, you'll pay a bit more on the interest rate to start with, but once your credit file becomes clean and you re-established your credit rating and you've got a track record as a mortgage payer, you can probably get back to a bank within 3 or 4 years. So, you know, a little bit of pain at the outset gives you gain later down the track. So it's all around trying to find a solution for people's circumstances.
And I love that because you said very early on when we asked that first question and some of those stories, and it's like you said, it's all about finding solutions and understanding people. Absolutely.
Yes. Always look at the solution first and then build the program around it. So look at the client's circumstances now, look at their aspirations, what's stopping us doing this, and addressing each of those. And most of the time, they're actually not that difficult.
Got it. We are coming towards the end of our live. Is there anything else you'd like to add for today, Jeff?
I think we're in an amazing time. I mean, there's lots of pain, unfortunately. You know, we've had dramatic increases in interest rates in the last 12 months, steepest curve that I've ever come across in all the years I've been in the industry. Interesting stats came out the other day, which sort of fly in the face of some of the doom merchants. One was that over 50% of New Zealand mortgage holders are actually ahead in their mortgage payments. And the second one was that the number of people in arrears in their mortgage is just on 1% of the total. But the real story there is that 6 months ago, it was 2%. So although we've seen significant increases in interest rates, people are managing really well. And there will be people that can't, and my heart goes out to them. But in the main, we're actually doing pretty well as a nation. Out of all the adversity, shall we say, with all the changes in rules and regs, and whilst I would never say the banks are my best friend, they're certainly not to blame for a lot of the lending decisions they're making. That they're being forced by the regulator to do certain things or not to do certain things. So the day of the non-bank, the alternative lending sector is definitely now. and at the moment it accounts for about 4.5% of the overall lending market in New Zealand. I think that will double in the next 12 months to 2 years. And as a business, we are probably one of the biggest players in that small pond. So the future is bright.
So don't read everything you read in the New Zealand Herald or stuff about the doom and gloom of house prices. It's all just to attract those eyeballs, right?
It is, and I always remember when I first got here in 2006, the guy at immigration said to me, "Welcome to New Zealand. New Zealand is a free country, but you can't live on a beach." And that's always stuck with me. So when you come to New Zealand, you either buy something, or if you rent something, somebody's got to own it. And that's so true.
We have another of 5 interviews over the next 5 or 6 months. Our next one will be about almost a bank saying no, and we look forward to that one. If you have any questions or topics about some of the things you'd like to talk about, please reach out to Jeff and the team at iLender. What is that telephone number at iLender?
It's 0800 Lender, very easy. And if you see me driving around in my car and you see the number plate Lender, knock on the door.
You have to get down quite low, though, don't you?
You do have to get down quite low. Yes.
Thank you so much for your time today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. And last one, do you have a pick for us in the Melbourne Cup next Tuesday?
Oh, I don't, but I do have a little story.
We've got time for a story.
We've got time for a story. Okay. World War II. And my father, like many people, came out of the army, and they were given what was called demob money. And most people went to either buy a house or maybe start a business. My father, being a bit different, bought a horse. And most people thought he was completely insane. Anyway, he trained this horse, or the horse was trained by a very well-known in those days Irish trainer. And in 1951, the horse, which is called Nickel Coin, won the Grand National.
Wow.
So the Grand National, if you don't know, is the most prestigious steeplechase in the world. And if you're Australian, close your ears. In my view, the Melbourne Cup is a circus. It's a bunch of horses running around with no jumps in a circle until somebody goes over the line. Steeplechase is a very different animal. So the relevance of the Melbourne Cup for me is I am very fortunate to have my father's Gold Cup from the Grand National, and I take it to an event every year when we can. So next Tuesday will be no different. So I'm at an event in the city, and I will be taking the cup with me, and it creates an amazing amount of attention. It brings a smile to everybody's face, brings a smile to my face, and it's my way of respecting my father and what he did. And since 1951 to date, Nickel Coin is still the only mare, or the last mare, to have won that race. So cheers, Dad.
What a lovely way to bookend personal story with a lovely story about, it's about the glory of winning that little Gold Cup. And I'm almost lost for words now. Jeff Royle, thank you very much for your time today.